Intelligence, Personalities, Traits, and Ways to Work Smarter. Written by Jason Hendrickson. Narrated by Alex Lancer. Copyright 2020. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. What makes somebody more intelligent? One important reason why people could find talking about intelligence awkward is the conviction that it is a thing you are born with, and therefore you can do nothing to affect it. That undercuts social equality and feeds into the very connection between intelligence assessing and tests and eugenics, which still has a big connotation for most people. Still, there is no getting away with the fact that intelligence is acquired to some degree. Researchers found that the IQ of kids adopted at birth bore little correlation with that of their adoptive parents or caregivers, but strongly associated with that of their biological parents. What's more, this association ended up being stronger as the child got older. That's counterintuitive for most people, says Robert Plomin at King's College London, who led the study. They think, as you go through life, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune build up, and ecological differences end up being cumulatively more important because they believe that genes only impact what happens at the moment of conception. And that's not true, naturally. As a matter of fact, numerous studies all point in the same direction. About 50% of the distinction in intelligence between people because of genetics, he says. However, genes aren't destiny. For many years, the quest for particular intelligence genes showed unfruitful. Not long ago, nevertheless, genetic research studies have grown big and powerful enough to identify at least some of the hereditary foundations of IQ. Although each gene associated with intelligence has only a small effect in seclusion, the combined influence of the 500-odd genes recognized so far is rather significant. We are still a long way from accounting for all of the heritability, says Plomin. But just in 2015, we have gone from being able to account for about 1% of the variation to maybe 10%. So, of course, genes matter, but they are definitely not fate. Genes give us a blueprint. It sets the limitation. Nevertheless, it is the environment that identifies where within those limits an individual develops, says psychologist Russell Warren at Utah Valley University. Take, for example, height, another highly heritable characteristic. Children will grow taller if they eat a healthy diet than if they eat a less healthy one, just because a very good diet plan helps them accomplish their full hereditary potential. Likewise, with intelligence. Iodine deficiency at the time of youth is associated with lower IQ, and addressing this in developing countries has increased cognitive abilities. So too has treating parasitic worms and removing lead from fuel. Other ecological influences on IQ aren't as apparent. Cases of abuse and neglect aside, twin research studies expose that the shared family environment has only a really little impact on cognitive capability. Plomin, for this reason, presumes that intelligence has less to do with parenting style than chance. It's distinctive aspects that make a difference, he says. Like the kid ends up being ill or something like that, but even then, children tend to recover to their hereditary trajectory. Chapter 2. What is intelligence and how is it gauged? Reading a roadmap upside down, excelling at chess, and producing synonyms for brilliant could look like three different abilities, but each is thought to be a measurable indicator of general intelligence, or G, a construct that includes problem-solving capability, spatial control, and language acquisition, and is relatively stable across an individual's lifetime. IQ tests compare an individual's efficiency on the test with the efficiency of other people of the same age, usually described as a normative sample. In kids, the score shows the distinction between a child's mental and sequential age. IQ, or intelligence ratio, is the score most widely used to evaluate general intelligence, or G, and typically measures a variety of skills, from verbal to spatial. Any person from any walk of life can be highly intelligent, and scoring high up on one aspect of intelligence tends to associate with high scores in other elements. IQ is the most robust mental characteristic gauged and highly associated with positive life results, including health and longevity, job performance, and adult income. It is also neuroprotective in ways that aren't fully understood. Those with high IQs are at a benefit in handling distressing events. They are less likely to develop full-blown PTSD and more efficient in conquering it when they do, and could experience less fast decrease in the course of Alzheimer's. Can intelligence be enhanced? Some aspects of intelligence can be improved. However, controversy swallows up how to improve intelligence and how much intelligence can evolve. Maybe the most relevant maxim is, just because people can circumvent limits on efficiency doesn't necessarily mean that efficiency was actually without limitations. First and foremost, one critical requirement for intellectual growth is rejecting the belief that intelligence is repaired. Second, the aspects of intelligence that can be improved include processing speed, problem-solving methods, and memory improvement. There's a much lower possibility of improving overall IQ test performance or working memory capacity, a major correlate of intelligence. The abilities practiced in brain training apps aren't readily transferable to either IQ test performance or to solving spatial ecological difficulties, and for this reason have not demonstrable impact on IQ. Are there various types of intelligence? Many of the psychologists see intelligence as one general step comprising a variety of skills, generally determined through IQ tests. In the early 1980s, though, Harvard scientist Howard Gardner proposed that there might be several kinds of intelligence that people possess in varying quantities. These types, of which there are now 9 different ones, include visual-spatial, logical-mathematical, and interpersonal intelligence, among others. According to Gardner's theory, somebody high in social intelligence would likely stand out at complying within a group, while somebody with high levels of logical-mathematical intelligence would have a heightened capability to comprehend numbers, patterns, and rational reasoning. However, although the principle has gained steam with the larger public and is typically used in character or work tests, many intelligence researchers dispute the existence of different intelligences and have criticized Gardner's theory, criteria, and research designs. Chapter 3. The best 4 ways to work smarter, not harder. Attempts to increase productivity, multitasking, working longer hours, and remaining continuously tied to technology typically backfire. The harder we work to get more done, the more likely we feel disappointed by our lack of attention period and lowered efficiency. The solution to reduced efficiency isn't that we should try to work even longer hours. Rather, we can take steps to work smarter rather than harder, and we'll get the exact same job done in less time. These 4 easy habits can help you get the most productivity out of the least amount of time and effort. 1. Engage in creative pastimes. The busier you are, the less likely you are to feel you have time for creative undertakings. But research also shows that an innovative pastime can improve your office performance. People who spend time doing activities that stimulate their creativity outside the office perform better at work, according to a study published by the Journal of Occupational and Organizational Psychology. Whether you enjoy visiting art galleries or you like embellishing cakes, creative ventures are connected to an increased ability to recuperate from work-associated stress. And the good news is your creative pastimes don't have to take a lot of extra time. Write some narratives at the time of your lunch break, or swap talk radio for music that influences your artistic side throughout your commute. Your creative endeavors are likely to trigger some creative problem-solving in the office, which can greatly boost your efficiency. 2. Have goals that fascinate you. No matter how hard you work, if you're not particularly fascinated by the task, you are not likely to perform well. In fact, your interest level may be among the biggest keys to accomplishing success, according to research from Duke University. A high level of interest optimizes your performance and keeps you deeply engaged. It's also crucial to feel like the task you're finishing is meaningful. If you see what you're doing as crucial, you're more likely to use the self-control needed to keep going, even when you feel awkward. Delegate boring tasks. Find ways to outsource projects that you're not enthusiastic about, and develop little objectives that will keep you mindful throughout the workday to stay as efficient as possible. 3. Lower the work-home dispute. Without the appropriate living style balance, you run the risk of experiencing a major dip in performance. When you feel stressed out about the demands of work and home, you are more likely to end up being mentally exhausted and depressed, according to a research study published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medication. Researchers also found a rather direct link between the work-home conflict and job burnout. Proactively develop a healthy work-life balance. Set limits on your willingness to work from home during night hours, or take breaks away from technology or screens. Engage in stress-eliminating activities like exercise and meditation to optimize your workplace performance. 4. Practice gratitude. When you are so busy that you don't feel like you have some time to think of anything besides work, take time to practice gratitude. Acknowledge all that you have to be thankful for and express thanks to your workers, managers, and business associates alike. Research shows that appreciation increases your ability to tension, reduces physical health concerns, and produces an overall increased satisfaction with life, all things that can definitely help enhance your work environment efficiency. Not only can gratitude make you more productive, but it can also make the people around you more productive. A study by the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania learned that when bosses thanked employees for their hard work, their expression of appreciation activated a 50% boost in productivity. Work smarter. There's a Zen saying that says you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes every day, unless you're too busy. Then you should sit for an hour. In today's fast-paced world, it's hard to find some time for healthy routines, but slowing down can actually accelerate your efficiency. Small lifestyle changes can go a long way to helping you work smarter and not harder. Chapter 4. Alfred Binet and his history of IQ screening. Interest in intelligence goes back thousands of years, but it was not until psychologist Alfred Binet was commissioned to recognize students who needed academic assistance that the first intelligence ratio IQ test was born. While it has its restrictions, and it has many lookalikes that use far less rigorous measurements, Binet's IQ test is widely known everywhere as a way to compare intelligence. History. During the early 1900s, the French government asked Binet to help decide which students were most likely to experience trouble in school. The federal government had passed laws requiring that all French kids participate in school, so it was essential to find a way to identify children who would really need specific help. Binet and his colleague, Theodore Simon, began developing questions that fixated on areas not obviously taught in school, such as attention, memory, and problem-solving abilities. Using these questions, Binet determined which ones acted as the best predictors of school success. He rapidly realized that some kids had the ability to answer more advanced questions that older kids were normally able to answer, and vice versa. Based upon this observation, Binet suggested the concept of psychological age, or a measure of intelligence based on the typical capabilities of kids of a certain age. The first IQ test. The first intelligence test, described today as the Binet-Simon scale, became the basis for the intelligence tests still in use today. Yet Binet himself did not believe that his psychometric instruments could be used to gauge a single, irreversible, and inborn level of intelligence. Binet emphasized the limitations of the test, suggesting that intelligence is far too broad a principle to quantify with a single number. Rather, he insisted that intelligence is influenced by many elements, that it changes gradually, and that it can only be compared in kids with comparable backgrounds. Stanford-Binet Intelligence Test. When the Binet-Simon scale was given in the United States, it created considerable interest. Stanford University psychologist Louis Terman took Binet's original test and standardized it using a sample of American participants. That adapted test, first published in 1916, was called the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale and soon became the basic intelligence test used in the USA. The Stanford-Binet Intelligence Test used a single number referred to as the intelligence ratio, or IQ, to represent a person's score on the test. The Stanford-Binet remains a popular assessment tool today, regardless of going through certain revisions for many years since its creation. The IQ score was determined by dividing the test taker's psychological age by his or her chronological age, and then multiplying this number by 100. For instance, a child with a mental age of 12 and a chronological age of 10 would have an IQ of 120. 12 divided by 10 times 100. Benefits and drawbacks of IQ screening. At the outset of World War I, United States Army authorities were faced with the job of screening a massive number of employees. In 1917, as chair of the Committee on the Psychological Examination of Recruits, psychologist Robert Yerkes developed two tests known as the Army Alpha and Beta tests. The Army Alpha was created as a composed test, while the Army Beta was comprised of pictures for recruits who were not able to read or didn't speak English. The tests were administered to over 2 million fighters in an effort to help the Army determine which men were fit to specific positions and leadership roles. After the war, the tests stayed in use in a variety of situations outside of the military. For example, IQ tests were used to screen new immigrants as they went into the United States. The results of these tests were sadly used to make sweeping and inaccurate generalizations about whole populations, which led some intelligence specialists to exhort Congress to enact immigration restrictions. Wechsler Intelligence Scales. Going even further with the concept of the Stanford-Binet test, American psychologist David Wechsler created a new measurement instrument. Similar to Binet, Wechsler actually believed that intelligence included different brain powers. Dissatisfied with the restrictions of the Stanford-Binet, he released his new intelligence test known as the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, or WAIS, in 1955. Wechsler also developed two different tests particularly for use with children, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, WISC, and the Wechsler Preschool and Main Scale of Intelligence, or WPPSI. The adult variation of the test has been revised since its original publication and is now known as the WAIS-4. WAIS-4. The WAIS-4 contains 10 subtests, along with 5 additional tests. The test offers scores in 4 major areas of intelligence: a spoken understanding scale, a perceptual reasoning scale, a working memory scale, and a processing speed scale. The test even offers 2 broad scores that can be used as a synopsis of overall intelligence. The full-blown IQ score integrates performance on all 4 index scores, and the General Ability Index is based on 6 subtest scores. Subtest scores on the WAIS-4 can be helpful in determining learning impairments, such as cases where a low rating in some parts, combined with a high rating in other areas, could suggest that the individual has a specific learning trouble. Rather than scoring the test based on sequential age and mental age, the WAIS is scored by comparing the test taker's score to the scores of others in the same age. The typical rating is fixed at 100, with 2/3 of scores depending on the normal variety between 85 and 115. That scoring approach has become the basic method in intelligence screening and is also used in the modern revision of the Stanford-Binet test. Chapter 5. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, WAIS, is an intelligence test first released in 1955 and designed to gauge intelligence in adults and older adolescents. The test was designed by the psychologist David Wechsler, who actually believed that intelligence was made up of certain different mental abilities rather than a single general intelligence aspect. History. Wechsler was disappointed with what he actually believed were the limitations of the Stanford-Binet intelligence test. Amongst his chief problems about that test was the single score that emerged, its focus on timed jobs, and the fact that the test had been created particularly for children and was thus invalid for grown-ups. As a result, Wechsler created a new test during the 1930s, known as the Wechsler-Bellevue Intelligence Scales. The test was later revised and ended up being called the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, or WAIS. WAIS versus Stanford-Binet. One fascinating thing to note is that Alfred Binet, the designer of the world's first intelligence test, also actually believed that intelligence was far too complicated to be based and sufficiently described by a single number. The goal of his original test was to help recognize kids who needed specialized help in school, and he felt that a variety of individual elements, including but not limited to a child's level of motivation, could influence test scores. In a sense, Wechsler's test was a return to many of the ideas that Binet had also upheld. Rather than giving a single general score, the WAIS provided a profile of the test taker's overall strengths and weak points. One advantage of this method is that the pattern of scores can also offer beneficial information. An example could be this: scoring high in certain parts but low in others might indicate the presence of a certain learning handicap. Like the conventional Stanford-Binet test, the WAIS also provides a general score. Having said that, Wechsler used a completely different approach to computing this number. As you might remember from reading about the history of intelligence screening, scores on the early Stanford-Binet were stemmed from dividing mental age by chronological age. On the WAIS, Wechsler instead compared scores of the test taker to those of others in his or her general age. The typical rating is fixed at 100, with around two-thirds of all scores falling somewhere between 85 and 115. Test scores that fall between these two numbers are considered average, regular intelligence. Most other intelligence tests later chose to adopt Wechsler's approach, including but not limited to the modern version of the Stanford-Binet. Chapter 6. Are people with high IQs more effective? While it could be natural to assume that those with incredibly high IQs have a flair for success, from Jay Gatsby in The Great Gatsby to Lex Luthor in the Superman comics, we have come to associate being super rich with being super smart. Even President Donald Trump has claimed to have an IQ that is one of the greatest in a well-publicized 2013 tweet, suggesting that his wealth was somehow connected to his intelligence. However, for every person we ascribe as genius, there are just as many like Nobel Prize laureate John Nash, of a brilliant mind popularity, and mathematician Kurt Gödel, who fought with mental illness and personal crises. In fact, some research indicates a connection between high intelligence and mental health problems. When crunching the hard numbers, is there any real evidence that an IQ can anticipate anything about a person's possibility of success, whether it be monetary, scholastic, or creative? Comprehending IQ tests. The very first IQ tests were designed to recognize school children in need of additional scholastic help. In time, that intention was flipped, and the tests quickly transformed into a means to identify individuals who had higher intelligence than the average. On a standardized examination, such as the Stanford-Binet test, the average IQ score is 100. Anything above 140 is considered a high or genius level IQ, it is approximated that between 0.25% and 1% of the population fall into this elite category. Terman's research study of the gifted. With the development of IQ screening, scientists started to analyze whether higher tests affected anything more than a person's scholastic success. In the early 1920s, psychologist Lewis Terman started to investigate the emotional and social development skills of kids with a genius-level IQ. Basing his study in California, Terman chose 1,500 kids between the ages of 8 and 12 who together had an average IQ of 150. Of these, 80 had scored over 170. Over the next few years, Terman continued to track the children and realized that most were socially and physically well adjusted. Not only were they academically effective, but they also tended to be much healthier, more powerful, taller, and less accident-prone than a matched set of kids with normal IQs. After Terman's death in 1956, other psychologists chose to continue the research, dubbed the Terman Study of the Gifted. The research study continues to this day and is the longest-running longitudinal study in history. Connection of intelligence and accomplishment. Amongst some of the original individuals of the Terman study was famed academic psychologist Lee Cronbach, I Love Lucy author Jess Oppenheimer, kid psychologist Robert Sears, researcher Ansel Keys, and over 50 others who had since become professors at institutions of higher learnings. When looking at the group as a whole, Terman reported the average income of Terman's subjects in 1955 was an impressive $33,000, contrasted with a nationwide average of $5,000. Two-thirds had earned college degrees, while a great deal had gone on to get postgraduate and professional degrees. A lot of these had become doctors, attorneys, business executives, and scientists. As outstanding as these results seemed, the success stories seemed more the exception than the rule. In his own assessment, Terman noted that most subjects pursued occupations as modest as those of policeman, seaman, typist, and filing clerk, and finally concluded that intelligence and accomplishment were far from perfectly correlated. Personality type and success. Academic Melita Oden, who carried on Terman's research after his death, decided to compare the 100 most successful subjects, Group A, to the 100 least successful, Group C. While they essentially had the same IQ levels, those in Group C only earned partially above the typical salary of the time and had higher rates of alcohol addiction and divorce than people in Group A. According to Oden, the variation was explained in big part by the psychological characteristics of the groups. Those in Group A tended to display prudence and forethought, determination, and the desire to stand out. Moreover, as grown-ups, they exhibited three crucial characteristics not seen in most Group C subjects: goal orientation, self-esteem, and determination. This suggests that while IQ can contribute in life success, characteristics stay the identifying feature in actualizing that success. Criticism of the Terman research study. While the findings of the Terman research study were engaging, they are often criticized for omitting elements that may have added to an individual's success or failure. This included the impact of the Great Depression and the Second World War on an individual's academic achievement and gender politics, which limited the professional potential customers of women. Other scientists have since suggested that any arbitrarily chosen group of children with similar backgrounds would have been just as effective as Terman's original subjects. What this tells us: one thing that IQ scores can reliably forecast is a person's scholastic success in school. Research also suggests that people with high intelligence have a tendency to be more effective at work as well. However, in many cases, it may just be the opposite. As a matter of fact, some research studies have suggested that kids with extraordinary academic abilities could be more vulnerable to depression and social seclusion than less gifted peers. Another discovered that the ones with higher IQs were more likely to smoke cannabis and use controlled substances. One explanation for this, according to the researchers, was a personality type referred to as openness to experience. That characteristic is just one of the key character measurements described in the Huge 5 theory of character. Openness is a characteristic that basically removes unconscious barriers that would otherwise prevent an individual from experiences considered socially undesirable. In addition, it is reasonably associated with creativeness, intelligence, and knowledge. By contrast, being closed to experience is more connected with routine, traditional conduct, and a narrower set of interests. Chapter 7. Can you change your personality? Is it really possible to change your character, or are our standard personality patterns repaired throughout life? While self-help books and sites typically promote plans you can follow to change your routines and behaviors, there is a relentless belief that our underlying characters are impervious to change. The Austrian psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud suggested that personality was largely set in stone by the tender age of 5. Even many modern-day psychologists suggest that general character is reasonably fixed and stable throughout life. Though, what if you want to change your personality? Can the right approach and consistent effort result in real personality change? Or are we stuck with undesirable characteristics that hold us back from attaining our goals? Is personality long-term? The desire to alter character is not uncommon. Shy people might wish they were more outgoing and talkative. Hot-tempered individuals might wish they could keep their cool in emotionally charged circumstances. At many points in your life, you may find that there are certain aspects of your personality that you wish you could change. You may even set goals and pursue taking on those potentially troublesome traits. This is an example. It is rather common to set New Year's resolutions fixated on changing parts of your character, like becoming more generous, kind, patient, or outbound. In a general sense, most of the professionals concur that materializing and long-lasting changes to broad qualities can be extremely difficult. So if you happen to be dissatisfied with certain elements of your personality, is there really anything you can do to change? Some specialists, including psychologist Carol Dweck, believe that changing the behavior patterns, routines, and beliefs that lie under the surface area of the broad qualities, or introversion, agreeableness, is the real key to character change. The factors that form a personality. To comprehend whether personality can be changed, we should first understand what exactly causes character. The age-old nature versus nurture dispute once again enters into play. Is personality shaped by our genes, nature, or by our upbringing, experiences, and environment, nurture? In the past, theorists and philosophers often took a one versus the other method and promoted either for the value of nature or nurture. But today, most thinkers would agree that it is a mixture of the two forces that ultimately form our characters. Not just that, but the constant interaction between genes and the environment can help form how personality is expressed. This is an example. You could be genetically predisposed to being friendly and laid back, but operating in a high-stress environment might lead you to be more short-fused and uptight than you could be in a completely different setting. Dweck relates a story of identical twin brothers separated after birth and raised apart. As adults, the two guys married women with the exact same given names, shared comparable hobbies, and had similar levels of certain characteristics gauged on character evaluations. It is such examples that offer the basis for the idea that our personalities are mainly out of our control, rather than being shaped by our environment and special experiences. These twin studies point to the power of hereditary impacts. Genetics is certainly essential, but other research studies also show that our childhood and even our society communicate with our hereditary blueprints to shape who we are. Focusing on the in-betweens of personality might be key, but Dweck suggests that personality change is still possible. Broad traits may be steady through life, but Dweck actually believes that it is our in-between qualities that lie under the surface area of the broad qualities that are the most essential in making us who we are. It is those in-between qualities, she believes, that can be changed. So just what are these in-between parts of personality? Beliefs and belief systems, Dweck proposes, play a vital role in forming personality right below the level of the broad traits. While changing certain aspects of your personality may be challenging, you can realistically deal with changing some of the underlying beliefs that help shape and control how your character is uttered. Other theorists have suggested that elements like goals and coping methods play a primary role in identifying personality. For example, while you might have more of a type A personality, you can learn new coping skills and stress management techniques that help you end up being a more relaxed person. Quote, "People's beliefs include their mental representations of the nature and workings of the self, of their relationships, and of their world. From infancy, humans develop these beliefs and representations, and many prominent personality theorists of different persuasions acknowledge that they are a basic part of character." End quote. Dweck clarified in a 2008 paper. Why focus on beliefs? While changing beliefs might not always be simple, it offers a very good beginning point. Our beliefs form so much of our lives, from how we view ourselves and others, how we operate in daily life, how we deal with life's challenges, and how we create connections with others. If we can produce real change in our beliefs, it is a thing which might have a resounding influence on our behaviors, and possibly on certain aspects of our personality. Take, for example, beliefs about the self, including whether personal attributes and attributes are repaired or malleable. If you believe your intelligence is a fixed level, then you are not likely to take steps to deepen your thinking. If, however, you view such qualities as adjustable, you'll likely make a higher effort to challenge yourself and expand your mind. Clearly, beliefs about the self do play a rather critical role in how people operate, but researchers have found out that people can change their beliefs to take a more malleable method to self-attributes. In one experiment, students had a higher gratitude of academics, higher grade point averages, and a greater general enjoyment of school after discovering that the brain continues to form new connections in reaction to new knowledge. Dweck's own research has shown that how children are applauded can have an influence on their self-beliefs. Those who are praised for their intelligence tend to hold fixed theory beliefs about their own personal qualities. Those children see their intelligence as an unchangeable quality. You either have it or you do not. Kids who are praised for their efforts, on the other hand, usually see their intelligence as malleable. Those kids, Dweck has found, tend to persist in the face of difficulty and are more eager to learn. So, what can you actually do to change your personality? Changing from an introvert to an extrovert could be very hard and even impossible, but there are things that the specialists believe you can do to make real and enduring changes to aspects of your character. Focus on changing your practices. Psychologists have discovered that people who display positive personality types, such as generosity and sincerity, have developed regular reactions that have stuck. Habits can be learned, so changing your regular reactions in time is one way to create character change. Naturally, forming a new practice or breaking an old one is never ever easy, and it takes time and serious effort. With enough practice, these new patterns of behavior will ultimately become second nature. Change your self-beliefs. If you believe you cannot change, then you won't change. If you are attempting to become more outbound, but you believe that your introversion is a fixed, irreversible, and unchangeable quality, then you will just never ever try to end up being more sociable. Still, if you believe that your personal characteristics are adjustable, you are more likely to make an effort to become more gregarious. Focus on the process. Dweck's research has consistently revealed that applauding efforts rather than capability is important. Rather than thinking, "I'm so clever," or "I'm so skilled," replace such expressions with, "I worked actually hard," or "I found a great way of solving that problem." By shifting to more of a development frame of mind instead of a repaired frame of mind, you might find that it is much easier to experience real change and development. Fake it till you make it. Positive psychologist Christopher Peterson realized early on that his introverted character may have a detrimental impact on his career as a scholastic. To overcome this, he decided to start acting extroverted in circumstances that called for it, like when providing a lecture to a class loaded with students or giving a discussion at a conference. Ultimately, these habits just became second nature. While he suggested that he was still an introvert, he learned how to become extroverted when he needed to be. Personality change may not be simple, and changing some broad characteristics may never ever actually be completely possible. However, researchers do believe that there are things you can do to change certain parts of your character. The elements that exist below the level of those broad characteristics that can lead to real changes by the way you act, think, and function in your day-to-day life. Chapter 8. The Big 5 Traits. Most of the contemporary personality psychologists actually think that there are 5 standard measurements of character, usually described as the huge 5 characteristics. The 5 broad personality types described by the principle are extroversion, also often spelled extroversion, agreeableness, openness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism. Characteristic theories of personality have long attempted to determine precisely how many personality types exist. Earlier theories have suggested a different number of possible traits, which includes Gordon Allport's list of 4,000 personality types, Raymond Cattell's 16 personality aspects, and Hans Eysank's 3-factor theory. However, many scientists felt that Cattell's concept was too complicated and Eysank's was too limited in scope. As a result, the 5-factor concept emerged to specify the important qualities that function as the foundation of character. What are the huge 5 measurements of personality? Today, many researchers believe that they are 5 core characteristics. Evidence of this idea has been growing for many years, beginning with the research of D.W. Fisk, 1949, and later expanded on by other scientists, including Norman, 1967, Smith, also 1967, Goldberg, 1981, and McRae and Costa, 1987. The huge 5 are broad categories of personality types. While there is a significant body of literature supporting this 5-factor model of personality, scientists don't always settle on the exact labels for such measurement. You may find it valuable to use the acronym OCEAN: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, when trying to remember the huge 5 traits. CANO, for conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion, is another commonly used acronym. It is essential to note that each of the 5 character elements represents a variety between 2 extremes. An example could be this: Extroversion represents a continuum between severe extroversion and extreme introversion. In the real world, the majority of people lie someplace in between the two polar ends of each measurement. These 5 classifications are generally described as follows. Openness. This trait includes characteristics such as creativity and insight. People who are high in this trait also tend to have a broad range of interests. They wander about the world and other people and are excited to learn new things and enjoy new experiences. Those who are high in this trait have a tendency to be more daring and creative. Many people low in this trait are often far more conventional and may deal with abstract thinking. High, extremely creative, open to trying new things, fixated on dealing with new challenges, happy to think about abstract ideas. Low, dislikes change, does not enjoy new things, resists new ideas, not very creative, dislikes abstract or theoretical ideas. Conscientiousness. Requirement features of this dimension include high levels of consideration, good impulse control, and goal-directed behaviors. Highly conscientious people have a tendency to be organized and mindful of details. They prepare ahead, think of how their behavior influences others, and bear in mind deadlines. High, hangs out preparing, finishes essential jobs right away, focuses on detail, is enjoying having actually a set schedule. Low, dislikes structure and schedules, makes messes and doesn't look after things, fails to return things or put them back where they belong, procrastinates important tasks, fails to complete necessary or appointed jobs. Extroversion. Extroversion, or extroversion, is characterized by excitability, sociability, talkativeness, assertiveness, and high amounts of psychological expressiveness. Most people who are high in extroversion are outgoing and tend to gain energy in social situations. Being around other people helps them feel energized and excited. People who are low in extroversion or introverted have a tendency to be more reserved and have less energy to expend on social settings. Social events can feel like draining pipes, and introverts often require a period of solitude and quiet in order to recharge. High, enjoys being the center of attention, likes to start conversations, enjoys meeting new people, has a large social circle of friends and acquaintances, finds it easy to make new good friends, feels energized when around others, says things before thinking about them. Low, prefers solitude, feels exhausted when having to interact socially a lot, finds it hard to start conversations, dislikes making small talk, thoroughly thinks things through before speaking, dislikes being the center of attention. Agreeableness. This character measurement includes attributes such as trust, altruism, compassion, love, and other pro-social behaviors. Many people who are high in agreeableness have a tendency to be more cooperative, while those low in this characteristic have the tendency to be more competitive and, in some cases, even manipulative. High, has a good deal of interest in other individuals, cares about others, feels empathy and concern for other people, enjoys helping and adding to the happiness of other individuals, assists others who need help. Low, takes little interest in others, doesn't care about how other people feel, has little interest in other individuals' issues, insults and belittles others, controls others to get what they want. Neuroticism. Neuroticism is a characteristic identified by unhappiness, bad moods, and mental illness. The people who are high in this trait tend to experience mood swings, anxiety, irritability, and unhappiness. Those low in this trait tend to be more stable and mentally durable. High, experiences a lot of tension, stress over many different things, gets upset quickly, experiences significant shifts in mood, feels restless, battles to get better after demanding events. Low, mentally stable, deals well with stress, hardly ever feels sad or depressed, does not worry much, is really relaxed. Are the huge 5 traits universal? McCrae and his colleagues have also found out that the big 5 qualities are also remarkably universal. One study that looked at people from more than 50 different societies found that the 5 dimensions could be accurately used to specify character. Based upon this research, many psychologists now believe that the 5 personality measurements are not only universal, they also have biological origins. Psychologist David Buss has proposed an evolutionary clarification for these 5 core personality traits, suggesting that these characteristics represent the most essential qualities that shape our social landscape. What factors influence the big 5 traits? Research suggests that both natural and ecological impacts play a role in shaping our character. Twin studies suggest that both nature and nurture contribute in the development of each of the 5 personality factors. One study of the genetic and environmental underpinnings of the 5 traits looked at 123 sets of twins and 127 pairs of fraternal twins. The discovery suggested that the heritability of each trait was 53% for extroversion, 41% for agreeableness, 44% for conscientiousness, 41% for neuroticism, and 61% for openness. Longitudinal studies also suggest that these huge 5 personality traits have a tendency to be fairly steady throughout adulthood. One study of working-age grown-ups realized that personality tended to be steady over a 4-year period and displayed little change as a consequence of unfavorable life events. Research studies have shown that maturation could have an impact on the 5 characteristics. As people age, they tend to become less extroverted, less unstable, and less open to the experience. Agreeableness and conscientiousness, on the other hand, tend to increase as people get older. Always remember that conduct involves an interaction between a person's underlying personality and situational variables. The circumstance that an individual finds himself or herself in plays a major role in how the individual responds. However, in most cases, people offer responses that are consistent with their underlying personality types. These measurements represent broad parts of personality. Research has shown that these groupings of characteristics tend to take place together in lots of people. For instance, individuals who are sociable have the tendency to be talkative, yet these traits do not always take place together. Personality is complicated and varied, and everyone might display habits across numerous of these measurements. This has been Intelligence, Personalities, Traits and Ways to Work Smarter, written by Jason Hendrickson, narrated by Alex Lancer, copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Intelligence, IQ Tests, Neurons and Signs of Intelligent People, written by Jason Hendrickson, narrated by Alex Lancer, copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Chapter 1. The Top 9 Signs You're Smarter Than You Think. You can toss a stone in any direction, and then it might hit a person who is overconfident and thinks they're smarter than they actually are. But a lot more typical are those that do not recognize they're actually smarter than they think. Is that you? Here are the 9 science-backed signs that you're not giving yourself enough IQ credit. 1. You're creative. Dr. Katie Davis, a scientific neuropsychologist, told Business Insider that creativity is a conclusive indication of intelligence because it needs thinking flexibly and outside of the box. and demands the ability to move and change your patterns of thinking from one way to another. I have worked with many ad agency creatives. They're some of the smartest people I have ever met. The ability to take an insight and translate it into a message that brightened my brand's benefits in a compelling, memorable way is a task few simply book-smart people could do. I usually left after a brilliant ad campaign presentation thinking, their brain just works differently. Creative skill is its own brand of smart. 2. You're sloppy. Kathleen Voss, from the University of Minnesota, claims that the messier you are, the smarter you are. A study Voss released in Psychological Science featured 2 groups asked to develop creative uses for ping-pong balls. One group worked in an untidy, messy environment, while the other worked in a neat setting. The untidy group brainstormed considerably more creative and fascinating ideas. So before scolding yourself for your constantly messy desk, give yourself some IQ points instead. 3. You are very curious. If you really love to learn, the more you will learn and the smarter you will get. Science backs this up. A study from Goldsmiths University of London discovered that how people invest their time and effort in their intellect, that is, feeding their interest, plays a huge role in cognitive development. However, it's not just learning more that makes you smarter. It is wishing to find out more, which is a quality common in intelligent people. A research study in the Journal of Individual Differences showed a connection between people who scored high up on IQ tests as a child and grown-ups that were more curious and open to new ideas. Psychology research from Georgia Tech also showed that those with high curiosity are more tolerant of ambiguity, which needs a sophisticated thinking style. 4. You talk to yourself. No, it is not a sign you're insane, just the opposite. A study from psychologists Paloma Marie Beffa and Alexander Kirkham of Bangor University revealed that talking aloud to yourself enhances self-discipline, an essential form of intelligence. They gave research study participants a set of tasks and accompanying written directions, asking to read the guidelines silently or out loud. Measured concentration and performance from those who read out loud was far better. Talking out loud nets control, which is precisely why so many professional athletes talk with themselves out loud during games, which brings us to the next sign. 5. You have high self-control. Whether you work out self-control by talking with yourself out loud or just by preparing it, it's an ignored indication of intelligence. A 2009 psychology research study from Yale University gave individuals IQ tests and offered them reward cash they could receive immediately or later for a higher amount. Those choosing to wait also had higher IQ scores, showing that withstanding making impulsive decisions and carefully weighing choices associates with intelligence. 6. You are okay with being on your own. If you like your own company and aren't constantly in need of being around others, that signifies intelligence. A study published in the British Journal of Psychology showed a connection between contentedness with being on your own and intelligence. I use alone time to think, prioritize, and plan, which strengthens self-control. 7. You're amusing. A 2011 University of New Mexico psychology study found that professional comics and people who wrote funnier cartoon captions scored higher on verbal intelligence. This adds up, as some of the smartest people I know have a razor-sharp wit and sense of humor. 8. You are unbiased. A 2008 Yale University psychology study revealed highly intelligent people tend to stay unbiased to others' viewpoints, not creating their own until hearing multiple voices. This doesn't mean they're unpredictable, however, as the research study also showed unbiased people are more likely to be confident about their viewpoint once formed and less likely to be manipulated. 9. You're not convinced you're particularly clever. Psychologists discovered the Dunning-Kruger influence, which says that people who are less qualified or bright regularly overestimate their brain powers, while smart people are much more aware of their restrictions. And understanding your constraints means you're more likely to surround yourself with people to offset your constraints. It also makes you hungrier to learn more, and what makes you smarter? Sign number 3. As Shakespeare said, "The fool doth think he's wise, but the sensible man knows himself to be a fool." Chapter 2. Brains of intelligent individuals have bigger and faster nerve cells. Researchers working within the Human Brain Project have for the first time uncovered a direct relation between brain cell size and IQ level. As they define in the journal eLife, bigger neurons in the so-called temporal lobe of the brain that produce electrical signals with higher speed are related to quicker processing rates and intelligence level as evaluated in standard IQ testing. Our brain works through the activity of its practically 100 billion neurons that each gather, process, and hand down information in the form of electrical signals. But so far, not that much had been known about how the distinctions in the properties of these cells from individual to person matter for human cognitive capabilities like intelligence. Some evidence had suggested that the size of so-called dendrites, the long branched-off protrusions through which each nerve cell receives signals from countless other cells, may contribute, particularly in brain parts that incorporate different kinds of information, like the frontal and temporal lobes. Brain cells have bigger dendrites. In these brain parts, the cortex, where most of the neurons are, is also thicker in individuals with higher IQ. Theoretical studies, furthermore, anticipated that larger dendrites might help cells to start electrical signals quicker. However, because of the really hard access to human living neurons, it was an open question until now whether any of these cellular properties could be proven to actually connect to human intelligence. A collaboration of standard neuroscientists at the Free University Amsterdam with neurosurgeons and scientific psychologists at Amsterdam University Medical Center now made it possible to find out whether smarter brains are indeed better equipped with faster and bigger cells. Quote, "The study is the first to take the single-cell perspective and link cellular properties to human intelligence," end quote, explains senior writer Professor Huub Mansvelde, a specialist for cellular neuroscience who is working within the Human Brain Project. The Dutch team studied 46 test subjects who needed to get surgery for brain cancers or epilepsy. Each patient took an IQ test before the operation as part of a pre-surgery assessment. To assess the unhealthy part deep in the brain, cosmetic surgeons frequently need to get rid of little intact samples of the temporal lobe. Those samples still contained living cells that the scientists studied. Both the size and the dendritic complexity of the cells, as well as their electrical signals, so-called action capacities, were measured in the laboratory and compared with the IQ scores. They learned that cells from the ones with higher IQ have longer, more complicated dendrites and faster action potentials, particularly at the time of increased activity. With computational modeling, they could also show that nerve cells with bigger dendrites and faster action potentials can process more info being available in and can pass more detailed information on to other neurons. Quote, "Typically, research on human intelligence fixates on three main methods: brain imaging studies of brain structure and function, hereditary studies to find genes connected with intelligence, and behavioral psychology," end quote, explains Huub Mansvelde. Behavioral psychological research studies have revealed that higher IQ scores are associated with faster reaction times of subjects. The new findings provide a cellular explanation for this association and link discoveries from the separate approaches, explaining how identified genes for intelligence can lead to increased cortical thickness, bigger nerve cells, and faster response times in individuals with higher IQ. Thereby, the research study connects levels of company in the human brain from function of cells to circuits to behavior. Quote, "This is just one of the significant objectives for us collaborating with all of these partners from other disciplines of neuroscience in the Human Brain Project to link the different levels of knowledge about the brain." End quote. The researcher says, follow-up studies are already planned. Quote, "As the IQ number is the summarized outcome of a large range of tests, we now have the opportunity to dig into the data and have a closer look at which skills in particular are associated the most to these cell features." End quote. Faster action potentials and larger dendrites to get and process more synaptic information could seem like a little distinction between neurons. Nonetheless, since our brain consists of near 100 billion neurons, this impact quickly multiplies to a huge impact on the computational potential of the brain as a whole. It's a small step at the level of a single neuron, a giant leap for the computational power of the brain, says Mansfelder. Chapter 3. The 11 most typical characteristics of highly intelligent people. Smart people aren't just described by their insanely high scores on IQ tests. They tend to share a lot of other qualities, like insatiable interest and a good sense of humor. We took a look at a Quora thread where users have noted some typical traits of highly intelligent people and checked out the science to see if it backs them up. Here are 11 qualities of very smart people. 1. They understand how much they do not know. The most intelligent folks are able to admit when they are not familiar with a certain concept. As Jim Weiner writes, intelligent people are not afraid to say, "I do not know." If they don't know it, they can't learn it. Weiner's observation is backed by a classic research study by Justin Kruger and David Dunning, which realized that the less smart you are, the more you overestimate your cognitive capabilities. In one experiment, for instance, students who'd scored in the most affordable quartile on a test, adjusted from the LSAT, overstated the number of questions they'd gotten right by almost 50%. Meanwhile, those who'd scored in the leading quartile somewhat underestimated how many questions they'd solved. 2. They have insatiable curiosity levels. Albert Einstein supposedly said, "I have no unique talents. I'm only passionately curious." Or as Kieser Alas puts it, intelligent people let themselves end up being amazed by things others take for granted. Research released in 2016 in the Journal of Person Distinctions suggests that there is a link between childhood intelligence and openness to experience, which incorporates intellectual curiosity in adulthood. Scientists followed thousands of people born in the UK for 50 years and learned that 11-year-olds who had actually scored higher on an IQ test turned out to be more open to experience at 50. 3. They read a lot. Just because they're so curious, wise people are also inclined to be voracious readers, writes Sheikh Mbake Diop. Indeed, a lot of the world's most effective people, Bill Gates and Oprah among them, say they inform themselves by reading anything they can get their hands on. 4. They're unbiased. Smart people don't close themselves off to new ideas or opportunities. Hammett writes that intelligent people are happy to accept and consider other views with value and broad-mindedness, and that they are open to alternative solutions. Psychologists say that open-minded people, those that seek out alternate perspectives and weigh the evidence relatively, tend to score higher on the SAT and on intelligence tests. At the exact same time, wise people beware about which ideas and viewpoints they adopt. An intelligent mind has a strong aversion to accepting things on face value, and because of that withholds belief till presented with adequate proof, says Alas. 5. They like their own company. In a since-deleted answer, Richard He indicates that highly intelligent people have the tendency to be extremely individualistic. Interestingly, 2016 research published in the British Journal of Psychology suggests that smarter people tend to derive less fulfillment than the majority of people do from being social with friends. 6. They have high self-discipline. Zohar Ali writes that smart people are able to overcome impulsiveness by planning, clarifying goals, exploring alternative techniques, and thinking about consequences before they begin. Researchers have found a link between self-control and intelligence. In one 2009 research study released in the diary Psychological Science, individuals needed to choose between two financial rewards: a smaller payment instantly or a larger payout at a later date. Results revealed that participants who chose the bigger payout at a later date, i.e. those who had more self-control, typically scored higher on intelligence tests. The scientists behind that study say that one area of the brain, the anterior prefrontal cortex, may play a role in helping people solve tough issues and show self-control while working toward objectives. 7. They're really amusing. Advita Bihani indicates that highly smart people tend to have a great sense of humor. Researchers concur. One 2011 University of New Mexico research study found out that people who wrote funnier cartoon captions scored higher on procedures of verbal intelligence. Another University of New Mexico research study learned that professional comics scored higher than average on measures of verbal intelligence. 8. They like dark humor. Elora Amber mentions research that suggests smart people have a twisted funny bone. Indeed, a 2017 research study published in the journal Cognitive Processing realized that people who scored higher on tests of verbal and nonverbal intelligence are more than likely to enjoy and understand black humor. For instance, here is the voicemail of the Self-Help Association for Alzheimer clients. If you still remember your topic, please speak after the tone. Those who appreciated the dark humor did not, however, appear to be in any way disturbed or aggressive. 9. They're sensitive to other people's experiences. Smart people can almost feel what someone is thinking or feeling, he concluded in the deleted answer. Some psychologists reason that empathy, being attuned to the needs and emotions of others and acting in a way that is sensitive to those needs, is a core element of emotional intelligence. Emotionally intelligent individuals are normally extremely interested in talking with new people and discovering more about them. 10. They think outside the box. Being clever is about thinking in a different way. Teodora Motatianu writes that highly intelligent people question the status quo. They question the old ways to do things. They have uncommon, out-of-the-box, obviously crazy ideas. In fact, staying with the status quo may undermine your success. Scott Galloway, a scientific professor of marketing at New York University's Stern School of Business, formerly told Business Expert that successful people, like successful companies, are always asking, "What if we did it this way?" 11. They're highly adaptable. Several Quora users noted that smart people are flexible and able to flourish in different settings. As Donna F. Hammett writes, intelligent people adjust by demonstrating what can be done regardless of the complications or limitations placed upon them. Mental research supports this idea. Intelligence depends upon having the ability to change your own habits to cope more efficiently with your environment, or make changes to the environment you are in. Chapter 4. Fluid versus crystallized intelligence. When you think about intelligence, what sort of things enter your mind? Intelligence is more than just the build-up of facts. It also incorporates the capability to learn new things. Psychologists have different definitions that they use to determine the different ways that we gain and use information. Different kinds of intelligence. When you think of intelligence, you may think of having a lot of knowledge about different subjects, but you also might consider fast thinking and the ability to reason. Such aspects represent what psychologists describe as fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence describes the ability to reason and think flexibly. Taken shape, intelligence refers to the accumulation of knowledge, facts, and skills that are obtained throughout life. People usually claim that their intelligence seems to decline as they age. However, research suggests that while fluid intelligence begins to reduce after teenage years, taken shape intelligence continues to increase throughout adulthood. Psychologist Raymond Cattell initially proposed the principles of fluid and taken shape intelligence and more developed the concept with his student John Horn. The Cattell-Horn theory of fluid and crystallized intelligence suggests that intelligence is made up of different abilities that connect and interact to produce general individual intelligence. Fluid intelligence. Cattell specified fluid intelligence as the ability to view relationships independent of former particular practice or instruction concerning those relationships. Fluid intelligence includes having the ability to think and reason abstractly and solve problems. This ability is considered independent of learning, experience, and education. Examples of the usage of fluid intelligence include solving puzzles and developing problem-solving techniques. This element of intelligence includes the ability to solve issues and reason about things independent of previously existing knowledge. When you encounter a totally new issue that cannot be fixed with your existing knowledge, you must count on fluid intelligence to resolve it. Fluid intelligence tends to decrease at the time of late adulthood. Certain cognitive skills associated with fluid intelligence tend to decrease as people reach later adulthood. Crystallized intelligence. Crystallized intelligence includes knowledge that originates from previous learning and past experiences. Circumstances that need taken shape intelligence include reading, understanding, and vocabulary tests. Crystallized intelligence is based upon facts and rooted in experiences. As we age and collect new knowledge and understanding, taken shape intelligence ends up being more powerful. As you may expect, this type of intelligence tends to increase with age. The more learning and experience you have, the more you build up your taken shape intelligence. Distinctions and interrelationship. Does one of these factors have the tendency to be more crucial? Both elements of intelligence are similarly crucial in everyday life. An example could be this. When taking a psychology test, you may really need to rely on fluid intelligence to come up with a method to resolve a statistics issue, while you should also use crystallized intelligence to remember the specific solutions you need to use. Fluid intelligence, together with its counterpart, taken shape intelligence, are both factors of what Cattell described as general intelligence. While fluid intelligence includes our ability to reason and handle complex info around us, taken shape intelligence includes learning, knowledge, and abilities that are obtained over a lifetime. In spite of its name, crystallized intelligence isn't a type of fluid intelligence that has become taken shape. Instead, the two facets of general intelligence are considered separate and distinct. With that being said, fluid and crystallized intelligence are intertwined. Taken shape intelligence is formed through the investment of fluid intelligence when info is learned. By using fluid intelligence to reason and think about problems, the info can then be moved to long-lasting memory so that it can enter into taken shape intelligence. Changes in intelligence. Fluid and crystallized intelligence tend to change throughout life, with certain mental abilities peaking at different points. Fluid intelligence has long been actually believed to peak quite early in life, but research published in 2015 suggests that some elements of fluid intelligence could peak as late as age 40. Crystallized intelligence does tend to peak later in life, hitting its apex around age 60 or 70. Some things to remember about fluid and crystallized intelligence. Both types of intelligence boost throughout youth and teenage years. Taken-shape intelligence continues to grow through adulthood. Many aspects of fluid intelligence peak in teenage years and begin to decline progressively, starting around age 30 or 40. Improving intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is obviously something that can be improved through learning. The more collected knowledge you have, the more crystallized intelligence you're going to possess. So, if you are interested in enhancing this part of intelligence, advancing your education, either officially or informally, is something that will help. Until just recently, fluid intelligence was something that was actually believed to be set in stone. Current research suggests that brain training might enhance certain aspects of fluid intelligence, even in older grown-ups. Past research on intelligence suggested that people actually didn't have much control over their intelligence at all. Rather, it was really believed that our IQ was mostly determined by genetics, and that training programs aimed at increasing IQ tended to have limited efficiency. By contrast, an analysis of prior studies released in 2014 found that it is possible to enhance fluid intelligence with brain training. Where long-term memory is fixated on storing facts and information over extended periods of time, working memory is a type of short-range memory centered on what you are currently thinking of. Working memory is important because it includes not only being able to save info for a brief time period, but also the capability to psychologically manipulate that info. It makes a lot of sense, thus, that training an individual on a particular working memory task would improve performance on that specific task. What the researchers discovered, though, was that the training also increased unrelated cognitive skills, including, but not limited to, the capability to reason and solve new issues totally independent of formally gotten knowledge. In essence, with training, an individual may have the ability to engage the abstraction of thoughts and ideas as easily as using knowledge-based thinking. Seeking new knowledge helps build your taken-shape intelligence gradually, but challenging yourself with new experiences can improve your fluid intelligence too. Study individuals usually take part in intensive and hard brain training jobs over reasonably brief periods of time. That does not mean the exact same methods cannot be applied to your own life. The concepts are the same. Look for new challenges. Gains in intelligence do not originate from sticking to the same old routines. Keep checking out new things in life and keep learning new things. Tackle learning a new language. Take piano lessons. Go to a new country and find out about the people and culture. All of these types of activities keep your brain engaged, challenged, and focused on learning new things in new ways. Chapter 5. What is an IQ test? What is an IQ test? An IQ test is an assessment that measures a range of cognitive abilities and provides a rating that's intended to function as a procedure of an individual's intellectual capabilities and potential. IQ tests are among the most frequently administered mental tests. In order to understand what these scores really mean, it is essential to look at precisely how these test scores are determined. Today, many tests are standardized, and scores are derived by comparing individual efficiency against the norms for the individual's age. While many tests use similar approaches to get their scores, it is also essential to note that each test is different, and scoring approaches could not be the exact same from one test to another. Kinds of IQ tests. There are some different intelligence tests out there, and their content can differ significantly. Some are used with adults, but many are particularly crafted to be administered to kids. Some frequently used intelligence tests include Cognitive Evaluation System, Kaufman Evaluation Battery for Kids, Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale, Universal Nonverbal Intelligence Test, Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, Woodcock-Johnson tests of cognitive capabilities. Uses. IQ tests can be used for a large range of purposes consisting of educational evaluation and placement, assessment and analysis of intellectual disability, cognitive research, job prospect assessment, assessing cognitive abilities including memory, speed, and attention. Modern intelligence tests often concentrate on capabilities such as math abilities, memory, spatial perception, and language capabilities. Their capability to see relationships, resolve problems, and remember info are essential components of intelligence, so these are typically the skills on which IQ tests focus. Effect of IQ scores. Your IQ can have an influence on different areas of your life, consisting of school and work. High scores are often connected with higher accomplishment in school, while lower scores may be linked to some form of intellectual impairment. The following is a rough breakdown of numerous IQ score ranges. Some tests present scores in a different way, and with differing interpretations of what those scores may mean. IQ classifications. IQ level descriptive classification. 130 plus extremely superior. 120 to 129 superior. 110 to 119 high average. 90 to 109 average. 80 to 89 low average. 70 to 79 borderline. 69 and below intellectual disability. These classifications come from the Wechsler series of IQ tests for children and adults. Intelligence test scores generally follow what's called a normal circulation, a bell-shaped curve in which many scores lie near or around the average rating. For example, most scores, about 68% on the Wechsler series of intelligence tests, tend to lie between plus 15 or minus 15 points from the average rating of 100. This means that around 68% of people who take this test will score someplace between 85 and 115. As you look further toward the severe ends of the circulation, scores tend to become less typical. How common are extremely high IQ scores? Really few people, approximately 0.2%, get a rating of more than 145, showing a very high IQ, or less than 55, suggesting a really low IQ on the test. In a lot of cases, an IQ rating that falls right below 70 is considered low IQ, while a score of about 140 indicates high IQ. In the past, scores below 70 were used as a marker to identify intellectual disabilities. Today, test scores alone are not enough to identify an intellectual impairment, and diagnosticians also consider aspects such as the age of beginning and adaptive skills. Tips for making sense of your score. In order to understand what your score truly means, it can be handy to comprehend how IQ tests are created and how your scores compare to others. Your rating on an IQ test can tell you more about how you compare to others in your peer group with regards to things such as language abilities, mathematical capabilities, memory, processing speed, reasoning capabilities, visual spatial processing. In order to properly examine and interpret test scores, researchers who develop IQ tests use a process known as standardization. This involves administering the test to a representative sample of the entire population that will ultimately take the test. This preliminary sample represents the total population as accurately as possible and reflects lots of the important things that exist in the general population. That permits IQ test designers to establish standards or requirements by which individual scores can be compared. Potential pitfalls. IQ screening has been controversial throughout history for some reasons, consisting of discrimination. IQ tests have been used to validate eugenicist movements and discrimination against minority groups and handicapped individuals. Validity. Not all professionals settle on a basic definition of intelligence, so not all IQ tests measure the same things. Reliability. There's also the question of how dependable these tests are. Dependable IQ tests should supply constant results. Many people should score circa the same each time they take the test. Many aspects can influence IQ, and scores can change in time. Some of the aspects that can affect a person's IQ rating include educational access and background, nutrition, culture, environment, general health, and medical conditions. While higher IQ scores are linked to increased health, academic efficiency, and overall wellness, these scores do not necessarily forecast an individual's success in life. It is important to recall that IQ tests are only one step of intelligence. Many professionals suggest that other crucial components contribute to intelligence, and that includes social and psychological aspects. Some specialists even suggest that these social and psychological skills actually matter more than IQ when it comes to figuring out success in life. History of IQ tests. French psychologist Alfred Binet was the first to develop a formal test of intelligence, and a form of his original test is still in use today as the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Test. Sometime after that, psychologist Charles Spearman developed a principle of general intelligence, or a basic mental ability to perform a wide range of cognitive tasks. Psychologist Robert Yerkes developed IQ tests for the USA Army at the time of World War I to check Army employees. Throughout the 1950s, David Wexler developed IQ tests for use with children and adults. These tests stay well known today. Chapter 6. Hereditary and Environmental Influences on Intelligence. What role do hereditary and environmental influences play on identifying intelligence? This question has been among the most questionable subjects throughout the history of psychology and remains a hot subject of debate to this day. In addition to disputes about the fundamental nature of intelligence, psychologists have spent a great amount of time and energy disputing the various influences on individual intelligence. The argument focuses on one of the major questions in psychology: which is more vital, nature or nurture? Do genetics or intelligence play a bigger role in identifying intelligence? Today, psychologists recognize that both genes and the environment play a role in identifying intelligence. It now ends up being a matter of determining exactly how much of an influence each aspect has. Twin research studies suggest that the difference in IQ is connected to genetics. This research suggests that genes might play a bigger role than environmental factors in figuring out individual IQ. One crucial thing to note about the genes of intelligence is that it isn't controlled by a single intelligence gene. Instead, it is the outcome of complex interactions between many genes. After that, it is important to note that genetics and the environment communicate to determine precisely how acquired genes are uttered. For example, if an individual has tall parents or caretakers, it is likely that the individual will also grow to be tall. Even so, the precise height the person reaches can be influenced by environmental elements like nourishment and disease. A child might be born with genes for brightness, but if that child grows up in a deprived environment, where he is malnourished and lacks access to educational opportunities, he could not score well on procedures of IQ. Evidence of hereditary influence on intelligence. Twin research studies suggest that twins' IQs are more comparable than those of fraternal twins. Sisters or brothers reared together in the exact same home have IQs that are more similar than those of adopted children raised together in the same environment. In addition to inherited qualities, other natural elements such as maternal age, prenatal exposure to hazardous substances, and prenatal malnutrition might also impact intelligence. Studies have found out that those with lower intelligence are more likely to report criminal victimization, which can have serious effects consisting of physical injury, loss of property, and psychological and emotional trauma. Proof of ecological impacts on intelligence. Identical twins, reared apart, have IQs that are less comparable than identical twins reared in the exact same environment. School attendance has an effect on IQ scores. Children who breastfeed for 12 months or longer had a higher IQ, about 3.7 points, at age 30. So, what are some of the environmental influences that can account for variances in intelligence? For example, studies have discovered that firstborn children tend to have higher IQs than later-born brothers and sisters. Why? Many professionals believe that this is because firstborn kids get more attention from parents or caregivers. Research also suggests that parents expect older children to perform better on a variety of jobs, though later-born sisters or brothers face lower task-focused expectations. Chapter 7. Are personality qualities caused by genes or environment? Psychologists often speak about personality types, but what exactly is a characteristic? How do psychological health experts specify this term? It is our characters that help make us unique people, but not everybody settles on exactly how many different qualities exist. Some break character down into extremely narrow and specific traits, while others prefer to look at qualities a lot more broadly. What are personality traits? Characteristics are normally described as the different characteristics that make up an individual's personality. In the Handbook of Personality, Theory and Research, authors Roberts, Wood, and Caspi define personality types as the fairly enduring patterns of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that differentiate people from one another. Characteristic concept suggests that our personalities are made up of certain different broad characteristics. For instance, extroversion, often known as extraversion, is a character measurement that defines how people interact with the world. There are people who are extremely extroverted or extraverted and outgoing, for example, while others are more introverted and reserved. Until relatively just recently, it was actually believed that personality traits changed very little over the course of a lifetime. Some newer longitudinal studies have exposed that qualities are a bit more nuanced than previously believed, and that some personality changes can and do occur with time. Kinds of traits. What would you say if a person asked you to note the personality traits that best define you? You might rattle off a variety of characteristics like kind, aggressive, courteous, shy, outgoing, or enthusiastic. If you were to make a list of each personality type, it would probably include hundreds or even thousands of different terms used to describe different aspects of character. Psychologist Gordon Allport once created a list of personality types that included more than 4,000 terms. The question of just how many personality traits there is has been the subject of argument throughout much of psychology's history, but many psychologists today rely on what is referred to as the Big Five model of personality. According to the Huge Five model, personality is made up of 5 broad dimensions. Individual personalities could be either high, low, or somewhere in between on each of the 5 core traits. The 5 characteristics that make up character are agreeableness, trust, altruism, kindness, love, and other pro-social behaviors; conscientiousness, high level of thoughtfulness, good impulse control, and goal-directed habits; extroversion, sociability, talkativeness, assertiveness, and excitability; neuroticism, sadness, bad moods, emotional instability, frets about many different things. Openness, creative, open to trying new things, happy to think of abstract ideas. Many of the characteristics you may use to specify your own character fall under one of these broad headings. Characteristics like shy, outbound, and friendly are aspects of extroversion, while traits such as kind, thoughtful, organized, and ambitious would belong to the conscientiousness spectrum. Each of these 5 qualities represents a continuum. Many people are low in certain qualities and high in others. As a matter of fact, lots of people are someplace in the middle of many or most of these attributes. Genes versus ecological causes. What matters more when it comes to character, nature or nurture? Just how much does your DNA impact your personality? Researchers have spent decades studying family, twins, adopted children, and foster families to better understand how much of a character is hereditary and how much is environmental. Both nature and nurture can contribute in personality, although some massive twin studies suggest that there is a strong genetic component. One research study, the Minnesota study of twins reared apart, studied 350 pairs of twins between 1979 and 1999. Individuals included both identical and fraternal twins who were either raised together or apart. Results revealed that personalities of identical twins were comparable whether they were raised in the exact same home or apart, suggesting that some aspects of personality are affected by genes. This definitely does not always mean that the environment does not contribute in shaping character. Twin research studies suggest that twins share around 50% of the same traits, while fraternal twins share only about 20%. Personality traits are complicated, and research suggests that our characteristics are formed by both inheritance and environmental factors. Those 2 forces interact in a wide array of ways to form our individual personalities. Characteristic changes. When it comes to some of the broad dominant qualities, change tends to be hard. When it does occur, these changes tend to be really subtle. A really extroverted person, for example, may become rather more reserved gradually. This doesn't mean that they will transform into an introvert. It just means that a subtle shift has taken place, and the individual's extroversion has been partially customized. The individual is still outgoing and gregarious, but they might find that they also enjoy solitude or more quiet settings on occasion. An introvert, on the other hand, might find themselves being rather more extroverted as they grow older. That doesn't always mean that the individual suddenly develops a desire to be the focal point or to spend each Friday night at a very large party. Still, this person could find that they begin to enjoy social events a bit more and feel less exhausted and drained after they hang out socializing. In both of these examples, the individual's core personality trait has not changed entirely. Rather, changes gradually, usually the result of experiences, have caused subtle shifts in these main characteristics. Key research principles. In their Handbook of Personality, Roberts and his colleagues define a few basic principles that have originated from character research. Identity development principle. People develop a more powerful identity as they age, and maturity brings a greater dedication to and maintenance of this sense of self. Throughout the more youthful years of life, people are still exploring different roles and identities. As people age, they begin to feel more powerful commitment to the identity they have forged over the course of their life. Maturity principle. People tend to become more agreeable, emotionally steady, and socially dominant as they grow older. Plasticity concept. While characteristics have the tendency to be steady, they are not set in stone. They undergo environmental impacts at any stage of life. Role connection concept. It is the consistency of roles that results in connection in personality types. instead of consistency in environments. This has been Intelligence, IQ Tests, Neurons, and Signs of Intelligent People, written by Jason Hendrickson, narrated by Alex Lancer, copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Intelligence, Theories about Psychology, Science, and Stupidity, written by Jason Hendrickson, narrated by Alex Lancer, copyright 2020, all rights reserved. Chapter 1. Theories of Intelligence in Psychology. Even though intelligence is just one of the most spoken about topics in the realm of psychology, there's no basic definition of what exactly constitutes intelligence. Some scientists have suggested that intelligence is a single general ability. Others believe that intelligence includes a series of abilities, skills, and talents. What is intelligence? Intelligence has been a questionable subject throughout psychology's history. Regardless of significant interest in the topic, there is still substantial disagreement about what elements make up intelligence. Aside from questions of exactly how to specify intelligence, the dispute continues today about whether precise measurements are even possible. At different points throughout recent history, researchers have suggested different definitions of intelligence. And although those definitions can vary significantly from one truth seeker to the next, existing conceptualizations tend to suggest that intelligence is the capability to learn from experience. The acquisition, retention, and use of knowledge is a crucial element of intelligence. Recognize problems. To put knowledge to use, people should be able to identify possible problems in the environment that need to be attended to. Resolve issues. People should then be able to take what they have learned to come up with a helpful solution to an issue they have seen in the world around them. Intelligence involves some different brain powers, including reasoning, thinking, problem-solving, and planning. While the subject of intelligence is one of the largest and most greatly investigated, it is also one of the subjects that generate the best controversy. While psychologists often disagree about the definition and causes of intelligence, research on intelligence plays a considerable role in many parts. Those parts include choices relating to how much financing should be given to educational programs, the usage of screening to screen job candidates, and the usage of screening to recognize children who really need added academic help. Brief history of intelligence. The term intelligence quotient, or IQ, was first coined in the early 20th century by a German psychologist called William Stern. Psychologist Alfred Binet developed the very first intelligence tests to help the French federal government determine school children who needed extra scholastic assistance. Binet was the first to introduce the principle of mental age, or a set of abilities that children of a certain age have. Ever since that time, intelligence testing has become a widely used tool that has resulted in developing many other tests of skill and aptitude. Nonetheless, it continues to spur debate over the usage of such testing, cultural predispositions that might be included, influences on intelligence, and even the very way we define intelligence. Theories of intelligence. Different scientists have proposed a range of theories to clarify the nature of intelligence. Here are some of the significant theories of intelligence that have emerged during the last 100 years. General intelligence. British psychologist Charles Spearman defined a principle he described as general intelligence, or the G factor, after using a strategy called element analysis to analyze some mental ability tests. Spearman concluded that scores on these tests were incredibly similar. The ones that performed well on one cognitive test tended to perform well on other tests, while those that scored badly on one test tended to score badly on others. He concluded that intelligence is a general cognitive ability that can be gauged and numerically uttered. Main mental abilities. Psychologist Louis L. Thurstone offered a varying concept of intelligence. Rather than seeing intelligence as a single general capability, Thurstone's theory fixated on 7 different main brain powers: associative memory, the ability to memorize and recall; mathematical ability, the ability to solve math issues; perceptual speed, the capability to see distinctions and similarities among objects; thinking, the ability to find rules; spatial visualization, the capability to envision relationships; verbal understanding, the ability to define and comprehend words; word fluency, the ability to produce words rapidly; theory of multiple intelligences. One of the more recent ideas to arise is Howard Gardner's concept of several intelligences. Gardner proposed that the traditional idea of intelligence, based on IQ screening, didn't completely and properly portray a person's capabilities. His theory proposed 8 different intelligences based on abilities and capabilities that are valued in different cultures. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence, the capability to control your body language and to handle things masterfully. Social intelligence, the capacity to detect and react properly to the moods, motivations, and desires of others. Intrapersonal intelligence, the capacity to be self-aware and in tune with inner feelings, values, beliefs, and thinking procedures. Logical mathematical intelligence, the ability to think conceptually and abstractly, and the capability to recognize logically or mathematical patterns. Musical intelligence, the ability to produce and appreciate rhythm, pitch, and tone. Naturalistic intelligence, the capability to recognize and categorize animals, plants, and other objects in nature. Verbal linguistic intelligence, well-developed verbal skills and sensitivity to the sounds, meanings, and rhythm of words. Visual spatial intelligence, the capability to think in images and pictures, to picture accurately and abstractly. Triarchic theory of intelligence. Psychologist Robert Sternberg described intelligence as mental activity directed to purposive adaptation to, selection, and shaping of real-world environments pertinent to someone's life. While he agreed with Gardner that intelligence is much more comprehensive than a single general ability, he suggested that some of Gardner's types of intelligence are better viewed as individual skills. Sternberg proposed what he described as successful intelligence, which includes 3 different elements. Analytical intelligence, your capability to assess info and solve problems. Creative intelligence, your capability to come up with new ideas. Practical intelligence, your ability to adapt to an altering environment. Questions about intelligence screening. In order to gain a deeper understanding of intelligence and the tests developed to gauge this concept, it is essential to comprehend the history of intelligence screening, the research that has been performed, and the findings that have emerged. Significant questions about intelligence and IQ screening still include: are intelligence tests biased? Is intelligence a single capability, or does it include a variety of several skills and capabilities? Is intelligence acquired, or does the environment play a larger role? What do intelligence scores anticipate, if anything? To explore these questions, psychologists have conducted a considerable amount of research on the nature, influences, and impacts of intelligence. While there has been significant argument over the exact nature of intelligence, no conclusive conceptualization has emerged. Today, psychologists often represent the many theoretical perspectives when discussing intelligence and acknowledge that this dispute is continuous. Chapter 2. Intelligence Screening for Children. Intelligence screening is the estimate of a student's existing intellectual functioning through a performance of different tasks created to examine different kinds of thinking. A student's intelligence quotient, IQ, is typically gauged by standardized screening with norm-referenced tests. Intelligence includes the capability to think, solve problems, evaluate situations, and understand social values, customs, and norms. Two main forms of intelligence are involved in most intelligence assessments. Verbal intelligence is the capability to comprehend and solve language-based issues. Nonverbal intelligence is the capability to comprehend and resolve visual and spatial issues. Intelligence is at times described as the intelligence quotient, IQ, cognitive functioning, intellectual capability, ability, thinking abilities, and general ability. The reason that intelligence screening is necessary for disabled students. The intelligence testing is done to better understand how well a kid can be expected to perform and to evaluate a student's needs. For the most part, intelligence testing is required by federal special education regulations to validate or rule out the presence of mental impairments and to establish IQ for the purposes of identifying a discovering impairment. Depending on the kind of intelligence test administered, it may supply crucial information on how students approach problem solving. Appropriately analyzed, intelligence screening helps teachers develop a proper, specially created direction and educational strategies for individual education plan, IEP development. Typical types of intelligence tests. IQ tests are one popular form of normed testing. They compare normal ability levels to those of individual students of the same age. Intelligence tests, also called instruments, are released in some forms. Group intelligence tests typically consist of a paper test booklet and scanned scoring sheets. Group accomplishment tests, which assess scholastic areas, in some cases include a cognitive step. In general, group tests aren't recommended for the purpose of identifying a kid with a disability. In many cases, though, they can be handy as a screening step to consider whether more screening is needed and can offer good background info on a kid's academic history. Individual intelligence tests might include some types of tasks and could involve easel test books for pointing directions, puzzle and game-like jobs, and question and answer sessions. Some jobs are timed. The Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, or WISC, and the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale, previously called the Binet-Simon test, are examples of customized intelligence tests. The WISC test includes language, symbol, and performance-based questions, while the Stanford-Binet test helps to diagnose students with cognitive disabilities. Computerized tests are being more commonly readily available, but, as with all tests, inspectors should consider the needs of the kid before picking this format. Nonverbal intelligence tests, such as the Comprehensive Test of Nonverbal Intelligence, or CTNOI, and the Universal Nonverbal Intelligence Test, 2nd edition, or Unit 2, are used to evaluate students who have language processing problems or those with minimal English efficiency. In these tests, jobs are developed to get rid of verbal intelligence from the evaluation of a child's thinking capabilities and to separate and examine a student's visual learning skills. Chapter 3. How average IQ scores are gauged. IQ, or intelligence quotient, is a step of your ability to reason and solve problems. It essentially shows how well you did on a particular test as compared to other individuals of your age group. While tests might vary, the average IQ on many tests is 100, and 68% of scores lie someplace between 85 and 115. While IQ can be an indicator of things like scholastic success, professionals warn that it isn't necessarily a guarantee of life success. In some cases, people with really high IQs do not fare so well in life, while those with average IQs may prosper. Average IQ scores. The measurement of intelligence has long been a hot subject in psychology and education, and a controversial one. Intelligence tests are among the most popular kinds of mental tests in use today. Ever since the first IQ tests emerged, tries to classify IQ have followed. In order to comprehend what an average IQ rating is and what it means, it is essential to first understand how IQ is gauged. While different test publishers utilize different scoring systems, for many modern IQ checks, the average or mean score is set at 100 with a standard variance of 15, so the scores comply with a normal circulation curve. Crucial considerations. On many tests, a rating of 100 is considered the average IQ. 68% of scores fall within one standard discrepancy of the mean, that is, between 85 and 115. That means that almost 70% of all people score within plus or minus 15 points of the typical score. 95% of scores fall within two basic variances, between 70 and 130. Outliers beyond those points represent only a little portion of the population, which means that only a little percentage of people have a very low IQ beneath 70 or a very high IQ above 130. Scores right below 70 could represent the presence of some sort of developmental or learning handicap, while scores over 130 might indicate giftedness. How IQ is calculated. Historically, IQ tests have been scored in one of two ways. In the first method, a person's psychological age was split by their sequential age, and after that increased by 100. The other approaches include comparing scores against the scores of others in the individual's exact same age group. In this approach, psychometricians utilize a procedure known as standardization to make it possible to compare and interpret the meaning of IQ scores. This process is achieved by administering the test to a representative sample and using these scores to establish standards, generally referred to as standards, by which all individual scores can be compared. Just because the mean rating is 100, professionals can rapidly evaluate individual test scores against the average to determine where these scores fall on the regular circulation. This means 50% of the scores fall above and below the average. When it pertains to IQ scores, both the mean and average score is 100. Categorization systems can differ from one publisher to the next, although many tend to follow a fairly similar rating system. For instance, on the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale and the Stanford-Binet test, scores that fall between 90 and 109 are considered typical IQ scores. On these exact same tests, scores that fall between 110 and 119 are considered high average IQ scores. Ratings between 80 and 89 are considered as low average. So, for the most part, if you receive an IQ score of around 100, then you have what is considered an average IQ. Do not worry, you are in good company. Many people score within one standard discrepancy of this average. How intelligence is measured. Intelligence tests are created to gauge taken shape and fluid intelligence. Crystallized intelligence involves your knowledge and skills you have acquired throughout your life, while fluid intelligence is your capability to reason, problem solve, and understand abstract info. Fluid intelligence is considered independent of learning and tends to decrease in later adulthood. Taken shape intelligence, on the other hand, is directly related to learning and experience and tends to increase as people age. IQ tests are administered by licensed psychologists. There are different sorts of intelligence tests, but many include a series of subtests that are developed to gauge math capabilities, language abilities, memory, reasoning abilities, and information processing speed. Scores on these subtests are then combined to form a general IQ rating. A few of the most typical IQ tests in use today include the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale for adults, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children, the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scales, the Kaufman Assessment Battery for children, the Cognitive Assessment System, the Differential Ability Scales, the Woodcock-Johnson Test of Cognitive Abilities. It is necessary to keep in mind that while people often talk about average, low, and genius IQ, there's no single IQ test. Various tests are in use today consisting of the aforementioned Stanford-Binet and the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, as well as the Woodcock-Johnson Test of Cognitive Capabilities. Each individual test is different in regard to precisely what's being gauged, how it is scored, and how these scores are interpreted. Debates over IQ. Since the inception of the very first tests of intelligence, both academics and armchair psychologists have debated differences in intelligence, which includes possible connections between IQ and race. In addition to connections between race and IQ, people have also attempted to connect IQ variations to other factors like sex distinctions and nationality. One essential aspect to also note is that overall, IQ scores have been rising everywhere in the world, a phenomenon known as the Flynn effect. Race and IQ scores. Throughout the 1920s, the United States Army utilized IQ testing on recruits and learned that different populations showed group differences in typical IQ scores. Such discoveries helped sustain the eugenics movement and the ones who supported racial partition. The 1994 book, The Bell Curve, revived the argument and debate, as the book promoted the concept that racial group differences in typical IQ scores were mostly the result of genetics. Critics suggested that such group differences are more precisely an item of environmental variables. Such arguments over race and IQ are a reflection of the age-old nature versus nurture dispute. Are certain characteristics and abilities more heavily affected by genes or by ecological causes? Those who believe that race is a determinator of IQ are taking the side of nature, suggesting that heritability is the primary factor of IQ. Even so, research has discovered that while genes do play a role in determining intelligence, ecological elements also play an important role. Environmental aspects also play an important role. Some elements that have been linked to group distinctions in typical IQ scores include education, health and nutrition, socioeconomic status, screening predisposition, and minority status. In reaction, the American Psychological Association formed a special task force led by psychologist Ulrich Neisser to investigate the claims made by the book. They found no direct evidence to support hereditary clarifications for test score differences between blacks and whites. Instead, they specified that at the present time there are no recognized clarifications for such distinctions. National distinctions in average IQ scores. Studies of national cognitive ability suggest that there are distinctions in IQ scores among different countries. Such studies stay minimal, but some explorations of this topic have been conducted by creating estimates of typical IQ for different countries. Such differences could be mostly linked to ecological influences like socio-economic elements, literacy rates, academic rates, and lifespan. According to research carried out by Richard Lin and Tatu Van Hanen, Hong Kong had the greatest average IQ at 108, while Equatorial Guinea had the most affordable at 59. Average group IQs of some other nations included the United States at 98, the UK at 100, and Italy at 102. Sex differences in average IQ scores. For many years, some researchers have claimed that either males or females held a benefit in regard to IQ, while others have argued that there are no considerable differences between men and women. One research study discovered that while there was no typical difference in IQ scores between men and women, there tended to be a more irregularity in IQ scores among men. Research has realized that there are small distinctions in the efficiency of verbal and spatial tasks, with women performing better on some verbal jobs and guys performing better on some spatial ability tasks. Nonetheless, scientists believe that this variation is only partially because of natural distinctions and is also affected by culture, experiences, and education. What a typical IQ rating means to you. While some minimal generalizations can be made in relation to your typical IQ score, keep the following in mind. It also suggests you have average reasoning and problem-solving abilities. Your IQ rating may be a great general sign of your thinking and problem-solving abilities. But many psychologists suggest that these tests do not tell the entire story. A typical IQ rating might not tell the entire story about what you are very capable of. Some things they don't gauge are practical abilities and skills. You might have an average IQ rating, but you might also be a great artist, an imaginative artist, an unbelievable vocalist, or a mechanical whiz. Psychologist Howard Gardner developed a theory of multiple intelligences developed to address this perceived drawback in well-known conceptions of IQ. IQ scores are not always set in stone. Researchers have also discovered that IQ scores can change over time. One research study looked at the IQs of teenage subjects throughout early adolescence, and then again 4 years later. The result revealed that scores varied as much as 20 points over that 4-year period. Some experts suggest that EQ may matter much more than IQ. IQ tests also struggle to resolve things like how curious you are about the world around you and how good you are at understanding and handling emotions. Some professionals, which includes writer Daniel Goleman, suggest that emotional intelligence, often described as EQ, might even be more crucial than IQ. And researchers have realized that while having a high IQ can indeed give people an edge in many parts of life, it is certainly no guarantee of life success. Do not stress if you're not a genius. The huge bulk of people aren't geniuses either. Instead, most people are somewhere within a 15-point variety of the average IQ score. Just as having a high IQ doesn't ensure success, having a typical or low IQ does not ensure failure or mediocrity. Other factors like effort, resilience, determination, and overall mindset are important pieces of the puzzle. Not all intelligent people get rich, are happy, do something helpful with their gifts, or are mentally smart. It's nice to have a high IQ, but to boast about it wouldn't be so smart, actually. If you do have an IQ that appears above average, then it would pay off to get more information about your special abilities, so you can use them to do advantages in life. Chapter 4. The most important 9 signs of low emotional intelligence. Some people are mentally intelligent, while others are intellectually intelligent. There's a difference, undoubtedly, and it seems like in some cases the two have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Do you know a person who never ever seems to be able to control their emotions? Perhaps they are continuously doing or saying the wrong things at the wrong time. Or perhaps they're always judging others, but have a difficult time accepting criticism. If this describes a person you know, chances are high that this individual fights with low emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, at times referred to as emotional ratio or EQ, is necessary to generally each factor of life. Actually, many specialists now believe that EQ could actually be more vital than IQ in determining general success in life. As such, having low EQ or low emotional intelligence can negatively impact not only your social relationships, but also your mental and physical health. When a person has a low EQ, there are a lot of ways it can emerge. Below are 9 traditional signs of those with low emotional intelligence. They always have to be right. You probably know somebody who always seems to enter arguments with others. Friends, family, colleagues, and even random complete strangers find themselves embroiled in conflicts with these argumentative individuals. Those with low EQ will often argue a point to death, while declining to listen to what anybody else has to say. Even if you supply them with evidence that they are wrong, they will reason that your facts are wrong. They have to win at all expenses and find it unrealistic to just consent to disagree. This is specifically true if others are critical of how the person does not comprehend what others are feeling. They ignore other people's emotions. Many people with low EQ are apparently oblivious to others' feelings. They might be genuinely amazed that their partner is angry at them, or that their co-workers don't like them. Not only that, but they get frustrated when others expect them to know how they are feeling. They behave insensitively. For the most part, individuals with low EQ don't know the right thing to say. They could also struggle to comprehend appropriate versus unsuitable timing of saying things. For example, they may say something insensitive at a funeral service, or make a joke right after a terrible event. If you react to their out-of-line response, they act as though you are being extremely sensitive. Because they have difficulty comprehending the emotions of others, it's no surprise that they are not able to translate and properly react to the psychological tone and environment. They blame others for their problems in life. People with low EQ have little insight into how their emotions might result in issues. The just one thing a person with low emotional intelligence won't do is hold themselves responsible for their actions. When something fails, their first response is to find a person or something else to blame. They may suggest that they had no other choice for what they did, and that others simply don't understand their circumstance. For instance, if they read through your texts, it's your fault for leaving your phone unlocked. If they struggle with a project, break a window, do not get the job, or burn supper, somehow, some way, they will make it someone else's fault. They have poor coping abilities. A failure to manage emotionally charged situations can be an indicator of low EQ. Strong feelings, whether their own or those of others, are tough to comprehend for those with low emotional intelligence. These people will usually walk away from these circumstances to avoid having to deal with the psychological fallout. Hiding their true feelings is also extremely common. They have psychological outbursts. The capability to regulate feelings is one of the parts of emotional intelligence. People with low EQ usually struggle to comprehend and control their emotions. They might snap reactively without comprehending what they are actually feeling or why they are so upset. A person who lacks EQ may also have unforeseen emotional outbursts that seem overblown and unmanageable. The smallest things set them off into a tirade that can last for minutes, even hours. They battle with relationships. People with low EQ often have very few good friends. This is because close friendships need a shared give and take, sharing of emotions, compassion, and emotional support, all qualities low EQ individuals typically lack. Rather, individuals with low EQ often come off as abrasive and unfeeling. They turn conversations toward themselves. Mentally dumb people tend to dominate the conversation. Even if they are asking questions and appear to be listening intently, they always find a way to shift every little thing back to them. Usually, they have to prove that whatever you're experiencing, they've had it better or even worse. No matter what you say, they've been there, done that. Naturally, we're not attempting to be negative here. I know of people who have had psychological outbursts who are usually really self-regulated, but at the time they were tired simply because they did not have sleep, had personal or financial stress factors in their lives, or were disappointed about certain problems that had been accumulating. It is necessary that we do not judge others, and that we work on our own emotional intelligence instead. Chapter 5. Gardner's Theory of Multiple Intelligences. When you hear the word intelligence, the idea of IQ screening might immediately come to mind. Intelligence is often described as our intellectual potential, something we are born with, something that can be measured, and a capability that is hard to change. In the last few years, though, other views of intelligence have emerged. One such conception is the theory of several intelligences proposed by Harvard psychologist Howard Gardner. Theory of multiple intelligences. This idea implies that standard psychometric views of intelligence are too restricted. Gardner first described his concept in his 1983 book, Mindsets, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, where he suggested that all people have different sorts of intelligences. Gardner proposed that there are 8 intelligences and has suggested the possible addition of a 9th, referred to as existentialist intelligence. In order to catch the full variety of abilities and talents that people possess, Gardner theorizes that people do not just have an intellectual capacity, but have many kinds of intelligence, which includes musical, interpersonal, spatial-visual, and linguistic intelligences. While an individual could be specifically strong in a certain area, such as musical intelligence, he or she more than likely possesses a variety of capabilities. This is an example. An individual could be strong in verbal, musical, and naturalistic intelligence. Criticism. Gardner's theory has come under criticism from both psychologists and educators. Those critics say that Gardner's definition of intelligence is too broad, and that his 8 different intelligences simply represent talents, characteristics, and capabilities. Gardner's concept also suffers from an absence of supporting empirical research. Regardless of this, the concept of multiple intelligences enjoys considerable popularity with educators. Many instructors use multiple intelligences in their teaching approaches and work to incorporate Gardner's theory into the class. Discovering more about the several intelligences can help you better comprehend your own strengths. 1. Visual spatial intelligence. People who are strong in visual spatial intelligence are proficient at visualizing things. These individuals are actually good with directions and also maps, charts, videos, and pictures. Strengths: visual and spatial judgment. Attributes: the people with visual spatial intelligence read and write for enjoyment, are proficient at putting puzzles together, interpret photos and charts well, enjoy drawing, painting, and the visual arts, recognize patterns easily. Potential career choices: If you're strong in visual spatial intelligence, good career choices for you are architect, artist, engineer. 2. Linguistic verbal intelligence. People who are strong in linguistic verbal intelligence have the ability to use words well, both when writing and speaking. These people are usually very good at writing stories, memorizing info, and reading. Strengths: words, writing, and languages. Attributes: the ones with linguistic verbal intelligence remember written and spoken information, enjoy reading and writing, debate or give convincing speeches, are able to explain things well, use humor when telling stories. Potential career choices: if you are strong in linguistic verbal intelligence, good profession choices for you are writer or journalist, attorney, teacher. 3. Logical mathematical intelligence. People who are strong in logical mathematical intelligence are proficient at thinking, recognizing patterns, and logically examining issues. These individuals tend to think conceptually about numbers, relationships, and patterns. Strengths: analyzing problems and math operations. Qualities: people with logical mathematical intelligence have excellent problem-solving skills, enjoy thinking of abstract ideas, like conducting scientific experiments, can resolve complex calculations. Potential profession choices: if you're strong in logical mathematical intelligence, good profession choices for you are researcher, mathematician, computer programmer, engineer, accountant. 4. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Those who have high bodily kinesthetic intelligence are said to be proficient at body movement, performing actions, and physical control. Many people who are strong in this area tend to have excellent hand-eye coordination and mastery. Strengths: physical movement, motor control. Qualities: the people with bodily kinesthetic intelligence are skilled at dancing and sports, enjoy creating things with her or his hands, have outstanding physical coordination, remember by doing instead of hearing and seeing. Potential profession choices: if you're strong in bodily kinesthetic intelligence, good career choices for you are dancer, builder, carver, star. 5. Musical intelligence. People who have strong musical intelligence are good at thinking in patterns, rhythms, and sounds. They have a strong gratitude for music and are often proficient at musical composition and efficiency. Strengths: rhythm and music. Qualities: the people with musical intelligence enjoy singing and playing musical instruments, recognize musical patterns and tones quickly, remember tunes and melodies, have a rich comprehension of musical structure, rhythm, and notes. Potential career choices: if you are strong in musical intelligence, good profession choices for you are artist, composer, vocalist, music teacher, conductor. 6. Interpersonal intelligence. Those who have strong interpersonal intelligence are proficient at understanding and engaging with others. These people are experienced at assessing the emotions, motivations, desires, and intentions of those around them. Strengths: understanding and relating to others. Attributes: the people with interpersonal intelligence communicate well verbally, are knowledgeable at nonverbal communication, see situations from different perspectives, create positive relationships with others, solve disputes in group settings. Potential career choices: if you're strong in social intelligence, good career choices for you are psychologist, thinker, counselor, sales representative, political leader. 7. Intrapersonal intelligence. People who are strong in intrapersonal intelligence are good at knowing their own emotions and motivations. They tend to enjoy self-reflection and analysis, including fantasizing, checking out relationships with others, and assessing their personal strengths. Strengths: introspection and self-reflection. Characteristics: the people with intrapersonal intelligence evaluate their strengths and weak points well, enjoy examining theories and ideas, have exceptional self-awareness, comprehend the basis for his or her own motivations and feelings. Potential career choices. If you are strong in intrapersonal intelligence, good profession choices for you are thinker, author, theorist, scientist. 8. Naturalistic intelligence. Naturalistic is the most recent addition to Gardner's theory and has met more resistance than his original 7 intelligences. According to Gardner, people who are high in this type of intelligence are more in tune with nature and are typically fascinated by nurturing, checking out the environment, and learning more about other species. Those individuals are said to be highly aware of even subtle changes to their environments. Strengths. Finding patterns and relationships to nature. Characteristics. People with naturalistic intelligence have an interest in subjects such as botany, biology, and zoology. Classify and catalog information easily. Enjoy camping, gardening, hiking, and exploring the outdoors. Dislikes learning unfamiliar subjects that have no connection to nature. Potential profession choices. If you're strong in naturalistic intelligence, good profession choices for you are biologist, conservationist, gardener, farmer. Chapter 6. Theories of Intelligence in Psychology. While intelligence is just one of the most talked about subjects in psychology, there is no basic definition of exactly what constitutes intelligence. Some researchers have suggested that intelligence is a single general capability. Others believe that intelligence incorporates a variety of aptitudes, skills, and talents. What is intelligence? Intelligence has been a controversial topic throughout psychology's history. In spite of the significant interest in the subject, there is still substantial disagreement about what components make up intelligence. Aside from questions of precisely how to specify intelligence, the debate continues today about whether accurate measurements are even possible. At different points throughout current history, scientists have proposed some different descriptions of intelligence. While these meanings can vary substantially from one thinker to the next, present conceptualizations tend to suggest that intelligence is the ability to learn from experience. The acquisition, retention, and use of knowledge is a crucial part of intelligence. Recognize problems. To put knowledge to use, people should be able to determine possible problems in the environment that really needs to be resolved. Solve issues. People should then be able to take what they have learned to come up with a valuable resolution to a problem they have discovered in the world around them. Intelligence includes some different brain powers, consisting of reasoning, thinking, problem-solving, and planning. While the subject of intelligence is just one of the biggest and most greatly researched, it is also one of the topics that produce the best debate. While psychologists often disagree about the definition and causes of intelligence, research on intelligence plays a significant role in many areas. Those parts include choices concerning how much financing needs to be given to curricula, the use of screening to screen job applicants, and the use of screening to recognize children who really need added scholastic help. Short history of intelligence. The term intelligence ratio, or IQ, was first coined in the early 20th century by a German psychologist called William Stern. Psychologist Alfred Binet developed the very first intelligence test to help the French federal government determine school children who needed additional academic assistance. Binet was the first to introduce the concept of mental age, or a set of capabilities that kids of a specific age have. Because that time, intelligence screening has emerged as an extensively used tool that has resulted in developing many other tests of ability. Nonetheless, it continues to spur argument and controversy over the application of such screening, cultural predispositions that may be included, effects on intelligence, and even the very way we define intelligence. Theories of intelligence. Different researchers have proposed a variety of theories to explain the nature of intelligence. Here are some of the significant theories of intelligence that have emerged during the last 100 years. General intelligence. British psychologist Charles Spearman described a principle he referred to as general intelligence, or the G element, after using a technique referred to as element analysis to take a look at some mental aptitude tests. Spearman concluded that scores on these tests were incredibly similar. People who performed well on one cognitive test tended to perform well on other tests, while the ones that scored badly on one test tended to score badly on others. He concluded that intelligence is a basic cognitive capability that can be measured and numerically uttered. Main brain powers. Psychologist Lewis L. Thurstone offered a differing concept of intelligence. Rather than viewing intelligence as a single general ability, Thurstone's concept fixated on 7 different main mental abilities: associative memory, the ability to memorize and recall; mathematical capability, the ability to resolve math issues; perceptual speed, the ability to see distinctions and similarities amongst items; reasoning, the capability to find guidelines; spatial visualization, the ability to imagine relationships; verbal comprehension, the ability to define and comprehend words; word fluency, the ability to produce words rapidly. Theory of multiple intelligences. One of the most recent ideas to show up is Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner proposed that the traditional idea of intelligence, based upon IQ testing, didn't totally and accurately depict an individual's capabilities. His theory proposed 8 different intelligences based on skills and abilities that are valued in different cultures. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence, the ability to control your body movements and to deal with things skillfully. Social intelligence, the capacity to spot and respond appropriately to the moods, inspirations, and desires of others. Intrapersonal intelligence, the capacity to be self-aware and in tune with inner feelings, values, beliefs, and thinking procedures. Logical mathematical intelligence, the capability to think conceptually and abstractly, and the capacity to discern logically or mathematical patterns. Musical intelligence, the capability to produce and appreciate rhythm, pitch, and tone. Naturalistic intelligence, the capability to recognize and classify animals, plants, and other items in nature. Verbal linguistic intelligence, strong verbal abilities and sensitivity to the sounds, meanings, and rhythms of words. Visual spatial intelligence, the capability to think in images and to visualize accurately and abstractly. This has been Intelligence, Theories about Psychology, Science, and Stupidity, written by Jason Hendrickson, narrated by Alex Lancer. Copyright 2020, all rights reserved.